Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the summer meeting of York SACRE. Could I, first of all, just check with the clerk that we are quorum this evening? Yes, we are. Thank you. My name is Maxine Squire, and I'm acting as the local authority advisor to SACRE this evening. The first item on the agenda is the election of the chair for 2023-24. We've had one nomination for that position, which is Councillor Bob Webb. So if I could ask SACRE to approve that nomination, please. So each committee. So first of all, Committee A. Happy with that. Committee B. Committee C. And Committee D. Okay, thank you. That's my part of the agenda done. So I will hand over to our new chair, Councillor Bob Webb.
Thank you, Maxine. Welcome to everybody. As you now know, I'm Councillor Bob Webb. I'm the new executive member for children and young people on the council here. And I think just before we go any further, to aid all of us, it's worth maybe just going around the room saying who we are, what we do, why we're here. And I believe we have got some people joining us remotely as well. Is that correct? Yes, good. So unfortunately, I can't actually see who's joining us remotely. So I'm just guessing. So I'm going to go around the room first, and then I'll come to people who are online in a moment. So if I start here and we just work round.
Hi, so I'm Councillor Sarah Wilson, newly elected Labour councillor for Fishergate. Thanks.
I'm Sue Bland, head teacher at St Oswald's Church of England Primary.
Olivia Seymour, a professional RE advisor to York SACRE.
Maxine Squire, I'm Assistant Director for Education and Skills with City of York Council, and I act as the local authority advisor to SACRE.
I'm Angela, the clerk to SACRE.
Taco Michiels, I'm head of RE at Joseph Rowntree School in New Iswick.
I'm Darush Maslum, representing the Baha'i Faith on Group A.
Emily Knight, newly elected councillor for York Rural West.
I'm Councillor Martin Rowley. I represent Oswald and Derwent Ward. I've been on SACRE for the last 4 years and I was keen to continue. I'm also a school governor at Archbishop Holgate School, and this is my 30th year governing schools. And I had hair when I started and a beard like Bob's.
Good evening, I'm Ian Hodgson, I'm the Humanist rep.
Thank you all. And yes, it's worth saying, actually, I'm also a school teacher in my day job. I work at Archbishop Holgate's secondary school, and I'm a physics teacher, so I'm from the other end of the spectrum, I suppose. I now have a list of who is online, so I'm going to ask people in turn if they can just introduce themselves and their role on this board. So I've got Karen Vincent first.
Hello there, I am Karen Vincent. I represent the Roman Catholic aspect of the SACRE. I work at All Saints Catholic School, just up the road from where you are, as an RE teacher. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I've got Penny Coppins-Siddall.
Yes, hello. I am a faith representative on SACRE and from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've been on probably about 4 years as well, I think.
Thank you. And my next person is Joseph Heppelstone.
Hi, good evening. I'm part of Group B representing the Church of England. I'm a teacher of RE and lead teacher for PSH at Archbishop Holgate School. I'm also a governor at Heworth Church of England Primary School.
Thanks, Joe. And finally, I've got Andy Todd.
Hello, good evening. I'm Andy Todd. I'm a primary school teacher and RE coordinator at Ralph Butterfield Primary School. And primary representative. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so that is all of us. Obviously, we have got several people.
Chair, I'm also online.
Is it Ben?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Oh, Ben, hello. You're not on my list. So Ben, I'm glad you're here. Tell me about yourself, Ben.
So I'm here in this capacity as the faith representative for York Liberal Jewish community. I've been a governor of lots of schools over the years, including Fishergate, where Sarah taught my children, which was lovely. And I think for what it's worth, I'm normally your vice chair.
Thanks. Oops. Thank you, Ben. Sorry, I missed you. I'll just ask an open question. Is there anybody else that I don't know about? Is there anybody out there? Which is an important question for this board. Okay. No. Thanks very much, Ben. Sorry for missing you. And then I'm going to come to the next item on my agenda, which Ben alluded to there, is the election of Vice Chair 23-24. Now, I believe there was a little bit of confusion about that. Ange, could you maybe just explain?
Yeah, in the Constitution, it states that we will do the election in the autumn term, so we'll carry that forward to the October meeting agenda.
Excellent, thank you. So, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Chair. So just for clarification, does that mean that Ben continues to be the Vice Chair? Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I'd put the two and two together and thought that's what that meant. So thank you, Ben, for continuing in that role. It's really helpful to know. Okay, so item 3 is apologies for absence and declaration of interest. Have we had any apologies for absence first?
Everybody's present.
Everybody's present who should be. Excellent. And have anybody got any declarations of interest to make? I can't see anything in the room and no one's waving at me frantically from the side of the room for online. Okay, so we move to item 4, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Now, whilst I was a councillor on the previous council, I wasn't on this body. So I know some people were, and I wonder if anybody who was on this board would like to comment. Ben, potentially as vice chair, have you got anything to say?
So unfortunately, I wasn't at the last meeting, which is really unhelpful. So the minutes make sense, but I can't speak to their accuracy.
Maxie.
Yeah. SACRE members may remember that we actually held an extraordinary meeting in the school that we were visiting to do for the first of our school visits to ensure that we were quorate to take some decisions. And one of those decisions was around allowing members to join via a virtual route, which obviously we've got people joining today via Zoom. And that was a substantive decision taken at that meeting. It was also to sign off the SACRE annual report for 21-22. Again, thank you to members of SACRE who attended that meeting. We did get that report signed off and sent to the DFE, as we're required to do every year, and to SACRE. So the main business of that meeting was to receive and approve the annual report, but also to discuss the concept of members joining future meetings virtually. I think the consensus of opinion from people in that meeting, and Martin will probably want to add to this, was that people could see the pros and cons of holding meetings that were hybrid meetings, but that there was a view that we didn't want to just establish them always as that was going to be the way that they were held, and that it really still needed to be the case that most people were prepared to commit to meeting face to face, but that we understood that there were certain barriers for certain members, which we wanted to give them the option to join virtually to ensure that each committee was always quorate. So, for example, some of our school colleagues sometimes find it quite difficult getting across the city in time to get to certain meetings. And we just recognised that particularly meeting in West offices can sometimes be quite challenging for particularly for colleagues who are trying to travel from school.
Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I concur with what Maxine said. I think I was the one dissenting voice. I'm happy to let people know that, only because I've had experience of hybrid meetings which haven't worked very, very well. And I think whilst it was resolved that we would have virtual attendance, I think it was agreed that we would review it. Yes, so we need to. That needs to be in the minutes somewhere that it would be reviewed, possibly on an annual basis. And I think the other thing as well was that so there were two other things that we kind of discussed really. One was the possibility of picking up meeting in schools again, because we got more attendance when we met in the schools and outside of West offices, and that was quite a popular opinion. And the other thing was, and again, this, I mean, no discourtesy to those that have joined remotely today, but actually to join remotely as a very last resort. So where you are able to try and be here physically, that you should make every effort to be here physically and not just simply choose to go online. But apart from that, I'm happy to confirm that that's an accurate record of the minutes, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. Well, I think what we'll do first is oh, sorry, Olivia.
That's all right. I just wanted to add to what Martin said, that I think if you are reviewing it, one of the things that would need to be considered is in terms of voting and the constitution, because it's one vote per committee. So what mechanisms there are for a hybrid meeting to enable committee members in the 4 groups to be able to have the conversation needed to reach a vote at key times. There are not many meetings where it's key votes, but if there is one coming up and it's hybrid, how that's managed so that members can have a conversation and reach their decision on voting.
Thank you, Olivia. And I think it is fair to say that there are real benefits to hybrid meetings. The fact that there's more people in attendance at this meeting, face-to-face and virtually, is the biggest benefit. We all know how busy people's lives are and how difficult it can be to get involved in things, and giving people opportunities to access in alternative ways is a really positive thing. But I do think it's worth saying that the point you just made there, Olivia, about how we then get people to be able to discuss things separately is important. Just speaking purely selfish as the chair, I have no idea whether the people who are sat remotely wants to be involved and want to contribute to this debate, for example, because I can't see them. And I think that's something that I do think needs fixing for the next meeting. I'm absolutely happy with hybrid meeting and the important point about reviewing it to see if it's worked, but I think we'd all benefit if we could see the people. So that's just something to think for the future, and that's nobody's fault, but it's just one of those things. If we can just do item 4 then. Martin has suggested that he's happy with the minutes. Are people happy to approve those minutes? An accurate record? Yeah. Excellent. I'm not hearing any dissent, so I think we'll take that as read, and then we'll move on to matters arising. So on the item of what Martin's raised, what others have raised about a review date for hybrid meetings, I think it's worth putting that into action. So I think a sensible review would probably not be after this meeting in the autumn meeting, but potentially the following meeting. Then we've had a good try at it over a couple of cycles. Are people happy with that?
Well, we did actually discuss leaving it for a year, which isn't many meetings. It's only 3. in the previous, I attended the previous meeting at the school. So we did talk about having it reviewed after a year.
Thank you. Could you just give me your name, just so I know who's who? Is that Penny?
Penny Siddall.
She is. Sorry. Thanks, Penny. Well, how about that then? Are we happy with that arrangement? If we say that will be the spring meeting then, the March meeting? Sounds good to me. Okay. Thank you, Penny, for that contribution. Are there any other matters arising from the minutes? No? Excellent. Yes.
It was just whether we can look at meeting other than here at West offices. And the only issue around that, which was discussed, was that obviously it's easy to have a remote access here because we're set up for it. Whether we would be, I mean, I know some of the schools, for example, we have met at Archbishop Holgate School before, and they were set up really well. We met at Ralph Butterfield's, and I think they were set up well. So it is possible for our IT people to go out, if they have plenty of notice, to set up the remote stuff for us. So I'd really encourage us to look, because we have to visit schools anyway, and look at going out to the schools, and maybe not just the schools, some of the places of worship, if there are any. Again, just leaving West offices, it's easy for access, easy for parking, and it's probably easier for some of our teaching staff as well. So I would encourage that, Chair.
I think that's a valuable point, Martin. And could I suggest then to members of this committee that if you have any suggestions for places of worship or schools that you think that it would benefit us to go and visit and to hold a meeting at, that they, suggest those to me, to Maxine, to Olivia, potentially, if the three of us could sort of then thrash out whether it's possible to meet in those venues, and we could come up with a timetable. I think that would be helpful. Dariush.
They need to be made aware of the hybrid process, and they should have the facilities to do that.
Yes, and I think that will be part of the decision-making process as to whether it will be possible or not. I imagine most schools would probably be pretty well set up for that, because we spend our days presenting things at schools. So, but I would think it's worth including, I think that's a good idea, maybe some of the faith organisations directly. And I think that will be part of the decision process. Martin?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, just sorry, Darius. So our IT people can come out, so they can make sure that we've got that remote access. We've done that before.
Yeah, they did that last year in the summer meeting when we met at Ralph Butterfield.
Yeah. So even if we go to a faith centre where there isn't that, particularly that option, we can bring that as part of the council.
So far as I know, the only place of worship that we might be able to go is the mosque, and perhaps some of the churches. I don't know about their facilities, but I'm not quite sure the mosque has those facilities. They may have that, we ask.
I can tell you that the mosque does.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think that sounds like a little bit of a plan, and we'll trundle around the city as best we can. And I think it's worth saying, though, if that does fall through and that is a problem, we of course have West offices to fall back on. And one last point on this, I do think if possible, face-to-face is really valuable for meetings like this. But it's not always possible, and that's perfectly fine. So we just need to make that point. Okay, I'm going to move us on to item 6. And item 6 is a proposal from the Humanist representative Committee A of City of York SACRE. So Ian, am I passing over to you here?
Yeah, excuse me. Was it 2 meetings ago? I can't remember when we had a discussion around the census data and the changing nature of religious faith and belief, and the changing numbers of people who attend regularly or believe, or of the various faith groups. And I think the discussion then, we agreed that our syllabus didn't represent sufficiently those of a non-religious worldview, and that we would need to update the agreed syllabus to represent that. I requested that we put that in writing so that we could ensure that the resources were available for doing it in a timely manner. I know that the Humanist UK do have some very good resources for looking at non-religious worldviews. So I just wanted us to sort of nail that down really, and nail down some sort of timetable to make sure that happened. Olivia very kindly, and I appreciate what she did with this, put some words together, which you'll find on page 3. Just a simple proposal that I think reflects what we were talking about. Sorry, Olivia.
It was just to clarify, Chair, that this paper takes into account Ian's request and the legal framework by which this happens. So it's SACRE itself can't vote to do this because the legal body that determines the agreed syllabus is the Agreed Syllabus Conference. And obviously we're hybrid this evening, so committees can't go away and talk and vote. So it may be that we have to note this paper, this meeting, and note it in terms of having a vote at the next meeting, but the vote will be to agree to ensure that the Agreed Syllabus Conference takes note of this, because SACRE doesn't make the legal decision. It would then be up to the Agreed Syllabus Conference as part of their due diligence and their review of the syllabus to take this into account in any decision making that they make from the agreed syllabus. But one of the things that we did commit to at that meeting was also, in the meantime, that ongoing training and support for schools, including working with Humanist UK to have a training session for schools, and also for schools to be signposted to understanding humanism, for example, as a resource that can be supplementing what's already in the agreed syllabus. So what I've provided for members is also what we currently have in the syllabus, so that you know what the current framework is, and then what the request is for the next agreed syllabus conference.
Thank you, Olivia. And you've answered one of my questions there about what were we going to do with this. Ian, have you got anything else to add at that point? No, thank you. Dariush?
I need to be educated here. I've been on SACRE for a very long time, but I've never come across this situation where a member bringing proposals to be voted on. Now, my understanding was, because we have got various groups, if anyone from their group wants to make any proposal, we'll have to first get their groups together, discuss it, and then the result of that discussion will come to the full SACRE. I don't know whether that is the right impression that I've had. So I would think that if that's correct, then the proposal should go to group A meeting held, discuss it, and then bring the result here.
So an individual member can bring something to SACRE. What we can't do is vote individually. So an individual member can bring something to SACRE in terms of asking a question. So this paper is appropriate in terms of asking the question. What we can't do is individually vote. So that's where the vote would need to go to members in their committees. So committee A would need to meet together and agree a committee A vote on it, committee B, and so on. So that's why my suggestion is that we note the paper this evening, but that the commitment is that the mechanism is sorted out for hybrids so that that decision can be made.
Thank you, Olivia. That's really helpful. And also on that front, that gives us a bit of a steer. Should we choose to note it? Should we choose to make that decision as a group tonight? It would literally just be a decision to pass it on to someone else to then look at it in a bit more detail. Dariush, I've seen you've had your hand up again, but I've now got access to who's waving at us online. So I'm going to go to Ben next. Ben?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for now knowing who's online. I was going to say, as a prequel, could you otherwise come and at least at the end of each conversation ask if any of us wanted to contribute?
Yeah, of course.
I think it was me that made the point initially that the census suggested that we had to take more account of the non-religious worldviews in York teaching. Nevertheless, I just wanted to put on record that we need to be clear about what the purpose of RE education is within the city, and I think that has to be first and foremost to promote understanding of religious views. It's not about promoting a religious view or religiosity. It is about children being able to understand the world in which they live. Now, that does include understanding that some people will not have faith, but it is also, and I would say much, much more important, that they come away with an understanding of what 85% of the world believe and understand what those different faiths might mean in the way that they approach the world. As I say, that's not about promoting these faiths, it's about understanding the world around them.
Thanks for that, Ben. I'm going to go back to Dariush and then I've seen you, Ian. So in fact, what I'll probably do is, Ian, if I get you to sort of come back to a few points, if that's okay. Dariush.
Sorry, Dariush first. Another issue that I have is that subject like this is not just my personal opinion, but what the larger Baha'i community, maybe national institutions, would have a say into it. Whether I will have enough time to consult with them or get their opinion, which may differ from mine. So there need to be a space of time for these kind of things, for us to be able to organize our consultations in that respect. It may not make any difference in the outcome, but I think the protocol will be useful.
Yeah, and I think an appropriate amount of time. But again, I will make it clear that we are only in this group sending this to an organization that could basically make up what you're just saying to come up with the protocol. Olivia, did you want to come back on that particular point? Ian, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just sensing a little bit of backsliding on the discussion that we had at the previous meeting. I'm concerned that we're seeing the issue of religious faith having priority over non-religious worldviews. My understanding of the legal framework is that non-religious worldviews have parity with religious worldviews. So I'm not quite sure I agree with Ben on that particular point. And we did discuss this at length. So I'm still hoping that when we pass this forward, that that these non-religious worldviews are very, very important. They're no more or no less important than any particular faith view.
Olivia.
Chair, I think in terms of the discussion, I think what's important is that we note that any decision that the agreed syllabus conference makes, and that's where the decision would sit, is about what's educationally appropriate within the legal framework for RE syllabuses. And so my advice as professional advisor is that this is noted, that what we're saying is that any conversation that takes place in that legal body that makes a decision will note the request of members, but any discussion needs to be around what's educationally appropriate for pupils at the time that a review of the syllabus takes place. And just to highlight that in terms of the legal framework, I have put a footnote on it, but the Fox report from 2015 in that judicial review talks about equal respect. It doesn't entail equal time, and that's relating to the range of religions and worldviews that's within our syllabus. Actually, nowhere in the legal framework does it talk about the amount of time each has, apart from Christianity, because of the education framework. But again, it doesn't give a percentage of time. It just talks about that should be in each key stage. And so I think what we shouldn't do is get into discussions about how much time everybody has, but about what is educationally appropriate in the context of an understanding of a range of religion and worldviews. And that decision can only be made by the agreed syllabus conference when it's done its due diligence of reviewing the current syllabus, talking to teachers, talking to members, and then making those decisions. I think what this comes from is a request from a member that we rightly should look at and understand. And I think the step tonight is to know that this is an important request from a member, and that our due diligence is to ensure that the agreed syllabus conference notes that request and has due diligence in taking that into account in any decision about a future syllabus.
Thank you, Olivia. I've got a few people want to speak, so I'm going to go to Taco, and then I'm going to go to Ben. I have seen you, and then I'll come back to Maxine.
Thank you, Chair. Just speaking as a head of RE who designs the syllabus for my school, for secondary, I can't speak for the primary agreed syllabus, but I can speak for the secondary agreed syllabus. And the way it seems to work to me, and we pretty much stick to the whole thing about 95%, you have bigger questions. And then from those bigger questions, you actually explore those, looking at all the different religions and non-religious views. So you might have one lesson where you have one particular question, one particular idea, and you might even be referring to 2 or 3 different religions or even non-religious views within that. Sometimes there might be one lesson which would focus solely on one religion or non-religious view. So we work very hard to make sure that we stay focused on those big questions rather than just going, well, now we're going to spend half term looking at one particular religion and their traditions, because then you would start getting into trouble with timings and percentages and things like that. So we really, using the syllabus, tend to just focus on those big questions and then using all the different perspectives to answer those questions so that all the students understand that there are these big world ideas and big world problems that are answered in religious and non-religious views. So in my perspective from teaching the syllabus, we have quite a broad range, and we do cover as many things as we can in the limited time that we've got.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful as well. And it's going back to that phrase of educationally appropriate, and is religious education helping young people to answer the big questions, and that's a very broad topic. Ben.
Olivia and Taco have made my points.
Thank you, Ben. Maxine.
Yeah, partly just to reinforce those points. When we've looked at previous results from the school surveys, one of the things that teachers do talk about is the need for more support around non-religious views and the way that they incorporate those into the curriculum. We've recognised that there is going to be on the 14th of July a workshop led by Luke Donnellan, who is from the Humanist Society. He's putting on a workshop for primary and secondary schools online. Details are coming out by yourself, Taco, and Andy. So we are recognising that. I think it's also important to recognise that we're sort of at that midpoint of the current agreed syllabus, because obviously it was published in 2021. And it is subject to a 5-year period of review. So we want to use this time as well as we're at that midpoint to think about some of those themes that we would want to take forward, and sort of laying some of those things for the agreed syllabus conference to begin to think about when it is convened in a couple of years' time.
Thank you, Maxine. Sue, I've seen you. I'm just going to go to Andy Todd.
Andy? Just to add on what Taco was saying, we in the primary sector we have a unit on humanism, and I do supplement that in our school with the stuff on Humanist UK, and we've looked at that before as being a good source of resources and planning materials. Much as Taco said, we do tend to stick quite closely to the syllabus, and equally also those big questions do involve wider faiths, including and beliefs, including humanism at Key Stage 2. One thing that we have discussed in the past is the use of planning resources such as those from Humanist UK, and suggesting those maybe as a good starting point to supplementing the syllabus and that bit of planning for the Humanist units. So I know that has been discussed in the past as well, although it was a little while back, I believe now.
Thank you for that. It's good to get the primary perspective as well. Sue.
So actually, that's just more or less covered what I was going to say. But I will just add that I popped into a classroom this afternoon and they were actually teaching about humanism as part of one of the big questions. So I know it is going on within the primary classroom.
Thank you, Sue. Martin?
And final word from me, Chair. As members of this committee, we're not here to promote our faith or our group. We're here to represent. And I think it's really important we understand that's the core of what we do. We're here to represent, not to promote. I think if we understand that, it makes it a little bit easier. And I welcome Ian's suggestions, by the way.
Thank you. Olivia.
Maxine made a very good point about us being in the part halfway through the agreed syllabus, and it is a challenge in some ways that the curriculum changes every 5 years, and you have to balance change where it's right, but also some sense of continuity for teachers in terms of shaping curriculum, particularly when there's been a global pandemic that's interrupted curriculum design for a couple of years. But my recommendation would be that in the next year of SACRE, that because an agreed syllabus conference can be convened at any time leading up to that 5-year process. And of course, you want to lead in and you want to make decisions in a timely manner. And so it might be appropriate for consultation to teachers on the current syllabus to happen in the next academic year, so that depending on the decisions you want to make, whether it's an update of the current syllabus with additional materials, whether it's a new syllabus and commissioning somebody to write that, whatever decision you're going to make, that you've got the time to do that in a way that means that you do have an educationally appropriate syllabus at the end of it. So I think that would be a helpful piece of work in terms of the work programme for SACRE next year.
Thank you. I wonder if any of the RE teachers on the call have any comment on that idea of, would that be helpful?
I'll take that one. Yeah, I think so. One of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking there is obviously when I wasn't here when we chose the most recent agreed syllabus, but I had the training on it. And I know that's something that we got from RE today, from those resources there. So would it be more useful to maybe petition them in some way to sort of see how we could work with more non-religious worldviews in there? Or would we go down the road of creating our own, which, having been part of the SACRE in Wigan, became something that was incredibly unworkable by the end of it? And so if we are using already written work, would it be useful for us to think about how could we either tag on, or could we maybe work with them to create something a little bit more bespoke for us? But otherwise, I think if we canvass other schools, and I think that would be something very, very useful, because if some schools are more reticent to use it, maybe making it more user-friendly for them, for their needs, would also be very useful in that questionnaire. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Penny, and then I'm going to go to Olivia, and then I'm going to sort of draw. Oh, and I've got Karen who hasn't spoke. So I'll have Penny, then Karen, then Olivia, and then I'll sort of draw this to a close. So Penny.
Thank you. One of the things that we have raised in previous discussions and when looking at the previous syllabus was the need to reflect the faiths in York itself. So how is York made up? What faiths are there that might not be? We had a discussion it might be Olivia that said, if you go to maybe Nottingham, there's lots of Sikhs there, and so your syllabus might be more reflective of their faith. But it's just a point to kind of consider when we're thinking about reviewing and reflecting on the previous syllabus and going forward, is the need to look at where we are in York itself with faiths. And we did try and with Olivia's help, we included some information with the last syllabus as kind of additional information to try and cover that, so that other faiths were kind of mentioned at least, and some information given to teachers. But I think it's important that we look locally to what we have.
Thank you, Karen. I think and that sort of almost brings us full circle to what we're talking about with the census data, doesn't it? And that's really helpful. Sorry, that was Penny. Karen, can you add to this?
Hi, yeah. Just to say really on the agreed syllabus. So All Saints is a Catholic school, and so we follow the diocesan syllabus as opposed to the locally agreed one. So things are slightly different for us. But in my previous two schools, we have used obviously the agreed syllabus, and looking at what the demographics in terms of your local area are like is crucial to being part of what we deliver in schools. But we need to make sure that we have got a cross section and a full range of representation from all faiths, so that we can cover and make sure that our youngsters are going out into the world prepared with knowledge of all aspects of faith.
Thanks for that, Karen. And finally, Olivia.
Yeah, just to highlight as well that the syllabus is obviously a framework. It acts similarly to the national curriculum documents in that it's a statutory document that's the beginnings of schools shaping a contextualised curriculum that's right for their schools. And so there is nothing to stop SACRE adding materials to the syllabus even before an agreed syllabus conference that are, again, educationally appropriate in supporting the development of RE in the city. So in the context of the syllabus that we've currently got, there is nothing to stop SACRE commissioning additional units on humanism, on the Baha'i faith, whichever decisions are made, and you don't have to wait for a new, making a decision about whether it's a new or updated syllabus to do that. So to give an example, Humanist UK have worked with RE Today on their latest publication, which is on non-religious worldviews, and that booklet for many schools that are members of NATRE have received that, which has appropriate materials. But you could ask them to write an additional unit, for example, on humanism before the syllabus is updated. So I'm not suggesting that's what you should do or could do, but it's just to highlight that the syllabus is the minimum, if you like, content and statutory framework. But part of SACRE's role is to continually think about the support and development for its schools. So doing some work on local communities in York is something that you can do without waiting till an agreed syllabus conference comes. So we've got the beginnings of that with those that contributed to the launch, but you could consider to do work in the meantime that then feeds into any review of the syllabus as well. So that's just worth noting in terms of your work programme. Thank you for that, Olivia. So trying to draw this together, and bear with me as I'm new. If I just offer my opinion, firstly, which is always dangerous, but I think from my point of view, if we're talking about if we're talking about learning about religions and people with no religion, that's really important. And I think the points that Taco made about seeing the big questions through all the different lenses we can is going to really benefit young people. So in terms of what we've got here, my proposal is that the report is noted and sent to the appropriate body. And I would also suggest that what Olivia's just said about commissioning units on humanism and consultation with RE teachers in particular, and any other sort of stakeholders that we think are appropriate, would be really important to sort of see where this goes and to see whether actually already in schools it's already happening, or whether schools think actually, no, there is something more that would be needed and would be helpful, or yeah, whether they think, no, actually, this isn't where we want to go. I think that would be really beneficial. Does that make sense? Has anyone got any comments on any of that? Anyone got any dissenting views to any of that? Thank you. Okay, well then I'm happy with that, and I'm happy to take that as an item that we've done, and we'll move on to the next. Okay, so we're now moving on to item 7, which is the SACRE monitoring visits to schools. I've read through the report, Maxine, and I've seen the little sort of form that gets filled in as we go through. Maxine, is there anything you want to talk to about this?
This is the sort of inaugural monitoring visit that SACRE have done. It's been a long-held ambition of SACRE really to find out more about what happens in terms of RE teaching in schools, and a number of SACREs do have a programme of school visits, and so we felt it was appropriate that we actually tried this out as part of our monitoring role as York SACRE. So this was, as I say, it was the inaugural visit. I would like to record thanks to the school that hosted us, because they actually took this visit extremely seriously, put a lot of thought, effort and time into preparation for the visit. And that was from the head teacher down, basically. It was good to see the way in which there was a whole school sign up to the idea of this particular visit. I think everybody who was involved in it learnt a lot from the process, and also it caused some reflections about how to prepare for visits and what more we would want to get out of it. So in particular, more preparation around speaking to young people and how to get young people's voice was one of the things that was really, really key. I think Martin, who was involved in the visit, would say that it's valuable enough to continue and to have a planned programme. Yeah. And so the experience of doing this almost as a pilot activity, I think it's now ready to begin to put a programme in place and begin to roll it out. I don't know whether there's any specific things that people would like to highlight from the report, but we did get feedback that the school felt it had been valuable as well, and that they felt there'd been good learning from doing this.
Martin, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, again, I'd concur with everything that Maxine said. I think there are a number of things that I was impressed with, and I don't mind naming names. So Andy was our host, Andy Todd, who's on this committee. And I've visited schools many times and continue to visit schools for lots of different reasons. I was genuinely impressed with the whole setup of the RE syllabus and how inclusive it is. You know, of all, kind of come back to what we just discussed about all faiths and none. But it was really clear that Andy and the head teacher who was supporting him had a real understanding and a real handle on how to deliver a good RE syllabus. And then when we spoke to the children, we were able to evidence that in terms of the conversations that we had with them. So you know, an excellent visit and with some great feedback, and one I would definitely want to kind of continue to do over the year.
Thank you, Martin. I think that's really helpful. And thank you, Andy, by the sound of it, for volunteering yourself, put yourself forward. That's always good. Has anyone got any comments or questions on this item?
What I would say as well, Chair, is it provides us with an extra source of evidence to inform the annual report, because obviously one of the roles of SACRE is to monitor the quality of RE across the city, and you know, there's no better way of doing that than actually going and seeing it in situ. So this was really quite a good way of developing that monitoring role.
Thank you. SACRE.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just sort of quickly ask and sort of add, when you're looking at the monitoring visit form here, could that be, are you looking at secondary schools as well? Is the first question. The second one is, would the form be slightly adapted? Because I would hope when there was a question here about do students recognise where RE is being taught? I would hope that they would see that if they were in my subject and in my lesson. And secondly, would it only what about the faith schools or the academy schools in York Secondary? Would they be on the list, as it were, to be visited, seeing as they would not necessarily have to go with the agreed syllabus?
No, obviously, primarily the role is around maintained schools, but what we would do is put this out as a voluntary framework for any academy that's using the agreed syllabus and would want to showcase what they're doing. Obviously, the difference for the academies is they don't have to adopt the agreed syllabus, and obviously the faith schools follow their diocesan syllabus. So it is slightly different for them.
Yeah, so for those that are not following the agreed syllabus, there wouldn't be a remit for SACRE to visit, unless the school says we want to show you what we're doing, and that's a different visit from this format of monitoring the agreed syllabus. But I would certainly encourage SACRE to include academies, particularly in the city where many academies are using the agreed syllabus. You would want their voice in this as well, because particularly for a syllabus review as well.
Yeah, and obviously for SACRE, we can actually monitor the quality of RE in faith schools through their Section 48 inspection results.
Thank you for that. I suppose then, following on from that sort of specific point around academies and non-maintained schools. Is there a piece of work then to essentially promote with these bodies what has just happened, what the benefits were, and then just basically send information to those academies and say, do you want to be involved? And I wonder, is that something that is happening?
Obviously, we've promoted the visits with the maintained heads group, and there was an agreement that they were quite happy that this could take place. We'll also do it with the academy chief executive officers, so that they can see it as something that just adds, as again, they can see it as a positive visit that can add to the general purposes of self-evaluation in the school.
Thanks. Everybody loves a good inspection, don't they? It's not. No matter how low
it's not an
paced it
inspection.
is.
Please don't use that word.
I know, a naughty word. There we go. But anyway,
And take that in sweat.
Oh, someone, Andy. Hello.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry. No, just to sort of say, firstly, thank you to Ben. The kind words. It was such a really, just say it was such a positive and supportive process as well, and actually. We put into action the points that were brought up, so it was really, really beneficial and worthwhile for the school. And obviously, I'm presenting to governors on Monday, which is one of the points and what we've done there with that. So just to reaffirm that it didn't feel like an inspection; it felt like a opportunity to share good practice. And I think that's really, really beneficial.
Thanks, Andy. I knew if I said that word, I'd get you all talking. Just. On that point, Andy, I wonder if you're willing to sort of maybe put a testimony together or on behalf of your school that we could then share learning with other schools. I think that might be quite useful.
I think that's a really important part of doing these visits, because what we're doing then is we're capturing the evidence of where the really good practice is. And that helps to build those subject networks, because it can feel quite lonely, particularly in RE departments, which are quite small in secondary schools. And also, you know, you've got a lone coordinator in a primary school who may have more than one subject responsibility. So it's that's one of the main things that we get out of this as well. How do we network people? How do we share the best practice?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? Networking always is beneficial in these situations. Okay, does anybody else have anything else they want to add at this stage to this item? Excellent. Okay, all right, well, shall we move on to the next item then?
Just before we move on, I will as well be approaching SACRE members about taking part in visits. So obviously, it has to happen during the school day, and I know that sometimes limits people because of their work commitments. But if we could get a group of people who do a rolling programme of visits, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'd written down where next, but I didn't think, after I'd already scared you all, I didn't want to bring that one up. Councillor Ellis.
Sorry, Chair. I think, again, just following, I mean, possibly once a term would be really helpful if you could kind of focus that. Though it's not too onerous on members of the committee, and it's not too scary for the schools that go to visit. It's never scary.
And I think if we link that to what we said earlier on about where we're hosting our meetings and things like that, we're building up a sort of a timetable, a schedule of what we're doing and how we're doing it across the city. I think that'd be quite valuable. Okay. Next item on the agenda is item 8. So we've got SACRE newsletter. I'm not sure who's speaking to this one, Olivia. Off to you go.
Thanks, Chair. So just to highlight some of the updates, obviously you've got a copy of the SACRE newsletter on the new template. I know that members asked for a central template to be used, and we've got that, and hopefully that gives you just a flavour of the range of things that went out to schools this term to support them in their work in classrooms. And then in the rest of the paper, a couple of things just to highlight. First of all is the Regional RE Hubs website, which is now live. Some of you will know that another hat that I wear is the regional lead for Yorkshire and Humber, and there is this national website that now has every region on it, and there's a separate one for Wales, and it's supported by all of the RE organisations, and there's some links into DFE, and this website will build over time, but I'm really pleased that, for example, Andy's primary RE local group is already on there, so that any teachers who are not sure where to go, that will signpost them to the local group that's meeting. We've also got a couple of our members who are speakers in schools, so Dariush and Penny, who've completed the national training. I've got a kite mark and feature on the website. And I suppose an encouragement, particularly to Committee A members who are representing their faith organisation, that to consider registering for that local speakers training, and so that there is a representation of the York area on there. Humanist UK, all their school speakers are trained and registered, so they feature in our region as under the banner of Humanist UK as well. There's also a place of interest section. Currently, in terms of York Minster is on there. They've completed the training, but again, encouraging places of worship in the city to consider doing its free training online, so that we have some more representation of York would be great. But if anybody has any questions about the website or how to get involved, then do let me know and I can support with that. And then just some other national news that I felt it was appropriate to make SACRE aware of around subject knowledge and support for ECT teachers. Again, this is obviously a national context, but I think it is something for York SACRE to consider in terms of what support is given to teachers, particularly beginning teachers, in terms of training on RE, support for subject knowledge. Through the newsletter, we can signpost to some of those national mechanisms, but that might be something for SACRE to consider in its work next year. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Olivia. That's really helpful. Has anybody got any questions? Okay, I've just got a couple. Firstly, I mean, how would we go about with what that last point there about working with training providers? Obviously, there's a number of different bodies within the city and beyond the city. What do you think about that?
So it varies from SACRE to SACRE, but many SACREs put on a training programme for their schools, whether that is bringing in speakers, trainers from particular bodies, or whether that's an RE advisor who's running a Termly network or training. And so it's really just considering the work of SACRE and what you do there. So some SACREs, for example, run a primary and a secondary RE leadership course for new subject leaders, or they run subject knowledge webinars, or they commission a particular body. So to take an example, there is the Jewish Museum in London do virtual training, and some SACREs buy them in to do something for their group of schools. The Humanist UK example that we already have in place is an example of that. It might be in-house training, or it might be seeking the appropriate trainer to do that, but an offer for York schools.
Thank you. So going back to something we talked about earlier, when we were talking about consulting with RE teachers, for example, is that something we want to do a bit more of here in York to find out what the need is? I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that. Councillor Rowley.
Thanks, Chair. I think Olivia's made a really valid point. You know, I can only speak as an elected member around this table, but virtually every other organisation and committee that we represent as councillors, there are a programme of training for us to attend and to be involved in that particular committee or group. And I would have to say that this one doesn't have that. Now I've got the benefit of 4 years kind of learning on the job, as it were, but I'm aware that newer members may not have, and certainly members of the other groups that come on could also possibly benefit from that. Thanks, Olivia.
Just to respond in terms of training for members, this SACRE is a member of SACRE, and SACRE does offer online training for members, and there is the Termly newsletter from SACRE that can be shared with members. But in terms of training in terms of the role of a member, then a SACRE training, just training for chairs of SACRE, training for clerks of SACRE, training for new members of SACRE, and then lots of other ranges of themes and topics. So I would really commend that to members, because that really does inform you and then in your role as a SACRE member.
So subtle hints to me there, Olivia, but thanks very much. Karen, you had your hand up and then it's disappeared again. Karen, do you want to talk?
No, it's okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, my only other question was, we've got lots of places of worship in York. I don't know enough about how our young people are connected to those places of worship, and whether post-COVID that is happening in the same way it necessarily has always happened. And I just wondered if, since we're talking about what is available, I think highlighting that would be really valuable. Dariush, you want to talk about that?
All the places of worship in York are Christian churches. There are only 2 mosques. One is a little bit hidden, but the other one is very visible. And the other faiths don't have any place of worship in York. They use Leeds and Harrogate and other places. And some don't have, and they meet at private homes.
Yeah, and I think the reason you've hit the nail on the head. This is exactly why I'm asking this question, that, you know, if you want to go to a church in York, or it's quite a straightforward thing to do.
Yeah.
But if you want to visit somewhere different and learn about different faiths, different religions, that's harder to do. And that's why I'm asking the question.
You have to go to Leeds.
Yes, and you have to go to Leeds, and that's doable. Councillor Rowley.
Sorry, and I think let me say the same thing. There is a Buddhist centre in York as well. So there are other, you know, we may not all know about them, but there are other faith centres as well.
And that's kind of why I'm getting to this point, that we need a list of what's where, and is that available? Olivia, it probably is.
I mean, I have lists that I use when I'm working with teachers, but I think that's another example of something that York SACRE could produce for its schools. And I think it's important that it's not just places of worship, but it's also about the communities that are in York. So to give an example, Interfaith York already have, again, this was given to schools at the launch of the last syllabus. They have a range of people who are willing to go in and speak in schools, and there is a mechanism by which schools can contact Interfaith York, and they will facilitate those people going in. So to give an example, obviously Ben, the liberal Jewish community, don't have their own place of worship, but they do have a community. Ben put together some information about the Jewish community that was shared at the launch, but also Sharon Jagar goes into schools and does visits. And so I think it would be really useful to have a York SACRE badge document that highlights the communities, if there is a place of worship or a space that they meet in that schools can visit. And then obviously we can signpost beyond York if schools do want to visit a place of worship that isn't available in York. But I think if we're talking about being educationally appropriate again, what I think is most important is that our pupils understand that there are these communities in York and how they worship in York and how we can interact with those communities.
Thank you. And as if by magic, Ben.
So again, Olivia has said almost everything that I'd say. The only thing to which is great. The only thing to which I'd add is that it is quite important that, you know, as part of understanding faiths, obviously for some it is very important to have a physical building, and that's where you go and you understand what's going on. In other cases, it's not. And so, you know, for example, when I go in and talk to schools, I always take our Torah scroll. Our community worship wherever our Torah scroll is. And that's part of the learning. So we need to avoid having a Christocentric attitude to places of worship, although I'm not certain that the national curriculum is very good on that.
Thanks, Ben. Penny?
I was just going to pick up the point that Olivia said about York Interfaith, really, that since we've kind of been signposted from the last syllabus that we exist and that we're here and we're here to support schools. We have had a number of schools contact us, and in fact we'll be going into Archbishop Holgate School on the 12th of July, and we'll do a presentation as York Interfaith, and then we'll subdivide into sessions of other faiths. So that has helped signpost places that don't have necessarily a place of worship, but are present in our community in York, and we have access to many of those people.
Thank you, Penny. That's really helpful to hear, and I'll see you on the 12th, no doubt. Okay. Anybody else got anything else to ask about that point? Okay, calm down. Right, so in that case, that's that item drawn to a close then. And Councillor Rowley, you might have a point to make.
It's just a point of clarification, Chair. As we entered the meeting earlier today, there was some confusion about my presence on this committee. If I could just, for the record, refer the clerk to page 28 of the supplementary agenda that went to full council at its main meeting. I'm clearly listed on there as the Conservative member. So I am complicit around this table and I am legal. So there's no need to go back to council to get me put on as an afterthought. But thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and we're glad to see you here as well. So thank you very much. Okay, just to sort of clarify for myself in terms of, obviously, I'm now chairing this committee, and we've had a few things that we want to action and a few things that we want to happen. Our next meeting is in the autumn. So I'm just sort of making members aware that I'll work with Olivia, I'll work with Maxine, sort of just keep an eye on what's going on before we come to our next meeting. And draw up a bit of a work plan, so to speak. Does that seem reasonable for everybody? We're happy with that?
Sorry, Chair, this will be my last word. I understand it's Olivia's last meeting, though, is that? Yeah. I shall turn my microphone.
Well, there we are. Off we go. Maxine, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Just to say that under item 9, correspondence on complaints, we received no complaints since the previous meeting. So there are no complaints that require determination. Yes, any other business? Yes, it is, as Martin pointed out, Olivia's last meeting with York SACRE. Olivia has been a really significant part of York SACRE in the time that she's supported it, and has seen a number of different LA advisors working with her over that period of time. But she's been she's been a constant really in terms of supporting SACRE. She is very, very knowledgeable about the way that SACRE's work. She did an immense amount of work last year around looking at the Constitution, ensuring that was compliant with the requirements of SACRE, worked very hard with democratic services to ensure that meetings were running as they should. So really the legacy that she leaves behind is that we've now got a fully compliant SACRE, which is working as it should. So, and that's a considerable piece of work. She also as well led training for SACRE members during that year, which really developed everybody's understanding of the way that the committees worked, of the roles, of what SACRE was and what it wasn't. And that's been really invaluable. Very fortunately, obviously, Olivia will continue to have her regional role, which means that we've got someone that we can actually email in that role, and when we're really wanting to know a little bit more, that's going to help us really. Olivia's also been instrumental in supporting Andy Todd in terms of his primary group in the city, and also I know has worked very, very hard to try and get the secondary group back re-established as well, which I know we now on stronger ground with that, aren't we, Taco, which is great. So it's really considerable, the amount of work that you've done, Olivia. You know, I think you've left SACRE in a much better place than it was a few years ago. And as a result of that, we're much clearer about how we can take forward some of the things that you've brought to us. So what we would like to do is say thank you. We will really miss you, and we're really delighted that you've got things that you know you're now taking forward and you really want to do, and that you've got your new home in Ireland, which is just fabulous. But yeah, you go with our best wishes, but we will miss you. We'll miss you lots. Yeah. Right. Just a small gift from us and a card. Okay. I'm going to move
Thank you. I look forward to hearing about the strengths of York SACRE as you continue. I've really enjoyed. I've been involved with SACRE for about 17 years, first as a teacher and then latterly as a committee B member, and then the last couple of years supporting an advisory capacity. And I know I've known many of you for many years, and I will miss you and miss our conversations, but I won't go away completely. So I am at the end of a phone. If you need me, I'll just be near the sea in Northern Ireland and enjoying that. But I'll chat with you all afterwards. But thank you, really, really kind. Thanks, Maxine, for your kind words.
There was me thinking I was just getting to know you, but oh, thank you for what you've been doing. Clearly, Martin.
Yeah, Chair, I would like just to, for the agenda, table a formal vote of thanks for Olivia and all that she has done in her time at SACRE. So I just proposed that.
Seconded. Everyone in agreement?
Yeah.
Write it down, Ange. No, thank you very much. Thank you for your support. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add to the meeting? Ian.
I was just wondering, I know you've not gone yet, but is there a replacement for Olivia?
As you know, we don't in City of York Council have any subject advisors anymore. So one of the things that we'll be thinking about is how we can get that specialist RE advice to continue to input into SACRE. My background obviously is that I was a former history teacher, and history teachers very often end up teaching RE as part of what they do. So I have got a little bit of an understanding of the way that school RE works. But yes, it's one of the things that we do want to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. Penny?
Thank you. I just wanted to raise Interfaith Week. I know it's a little bit away. It's most people know it's in November. I'm not sure if new members know it's in November. It begins on Remembrance Sunday, but in York we actually commence on the Saturday before, because we usually have a struggle fitting in all the activities and events that the faith communities wish to put on in that week. So I just wanted to flag that up again with Interfaith, and to say that we ran a competition last year, and we talked about running it on a yearly basis. We had an art competition, and Ralph Butterfield School did brilliantly in their submissions, and had the winning. We made an Interfaith logo, and the school had the winning logo. But we had a discussion at our committee, just so SACRE members are aware, that we felt that it was quite a huge task, and we worked with SACRE on that and through to the schools, that we've decided that we will run a competition with schools every other year, because of the amount of work that's involved, and we aren't a huge committee. So just so you're aware that we won't be running it this November, but we will look to run it the November afterwards and work with SACRE on that and schools to do something competitive, probably some kind of writing competition.
Thank you, Penny. Any more for any more? In that case, I draw this meeting to a close. Thank you, everybody, for being here or being online. Good night.